going to say, Storm, do you want to tell everybody why we were a couple of seconds late?
All right. So the reason we're late, ladies and gentlemen, is Dave had to go pee. Right. And so then Jay and I said, well, let's turn his volume up, see if we can hear him flush. And then there's a brief conversation about, did you not want me to go through this, Jay? Or just.
No, I'm saying he didn't flush.
We didn't hear him flush. Then we asked about it, and he says, well, no, I just wiped. And that brought about a whole conversation about, dick smears on people's towels and curtains and light switches and how I can never go back to the UK unless I have a black light. So
I was just being quiet, just wondering how far Stormy would go with it. All the way. You're a dirty American.
So was I actually a part. And let's just see how far he'll actually run with this one before we interject.
You're asking me how far I'm going to run with it.
I'm just glad you stopped before we got really bad. But anyway, hello everybody, and welcome to the machine. Hi Shelley again. We'll say hello to our members while we're on. I am losing my voice because I've been on sidetrack for an hour. I got a 10-minute break and I'm straight on here. So I'm just going to. We need a bucket while streaming. How do you know I haven't got one? 2 hours streaming today. I might have a hole in my seat. So that would be the dream. What I want is a seat, right, that vibrates, that's got a built-in loo and a beer holder, so I never have to leave it. So it just vibrates, sort of thing. But then you can
it's not like a system like an astronaut suit where it'll just divert everything away and you can stay put.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody will be none the wiser.
A robot brings me beer and snacks, and then I never have to leave. It'd be awesome. Or a cult that does it for me, and then they can do the royal penis is clean, Your Highness, sort of things. And like
the royal penis,
everything for me. The royal penis is clean. So that's my dream. I want a cult. We'll do a cult video at some point. I think we did that. Isn't this where we ended last video?
Oh my God! Yes, I totally forgot to send you all that shit on the cast opinions. I'm so sorry. It's been hell week, so
we really should worry that I keep making the same joke, or is it a joke? If I could get this is my whole goal with the machine, is to eventually get enough of you to become my cult, and that'd be great. Anyway, today's show is about UFOs. Again, the Americans have been talking about UFOs, and there's been a congressional hearing. And the one comment I saw from our great Bazza, who isn't on today, and it's Bazza, if you see the video, say hello, was that he put a link on one of our friends' channels, and it basically said, well, that was a load of that was all bun no meat, and he's got a good point. They had these congressional hearings, which we're not going to go on about a great deal, but they were a load of. They basically said an awful lot and not much. But we'll tear apart what they did say, and we'll talk about a few other things, and we're basically going to have an hour talking about aliens. I knew he'd be there.
There he is.
I knew he'd be there. So, first of all, a couple of things they did say in the congressional hearings. The first question I want to hit you both with. So they said that most of these objects that they get reported to whatever the current ATIP is, I forget what it's bloody called, are identifiable. Most objects are identifiable, but there are a few that they can't identify. And they do some very strange things. And some of these objects do characteristics that are unusual, but we'll talk more about that later. So, if a lot of these objects are identifiable, would that make sense, basically, is my thinking? If UFOs are coming to this planet, but they're not that common, I don't see it's like being like a taxi run where aliens are just like, zoom, 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 zoom. So does it completely make sense that actually sightings of these things are rare? Either of you?
It's, I would say so. I mean, if they were less rare, I think we'd have more chatter about it. I think the chatter is relative to A, sightings, and B, how much the media is talking about it.
Well, yeah, exactly. How about you, Dave? What do you think?
I think mostly sightings are judged from officialdom or figures released by officialdom and by official bodies, by the military. When it comes to the amount of sightings that are actually public related and never reported, and obviously it's difficult to gauge because a large amount of them are not reported, then the sheer amount of sightings and the percentage goes right through the roof. So I don't think that while the two stats might not be mutually exclusive, they're certainly not mutually inclusive when it comes to doing these reports from official bodies such as the Pentagon and the governments and such. So I'm not too sure about that. I think a lot of sightings go unreported. So still, because of the way that the media portrays it, because there still is an element of ridicule. You only need to watch a couple of different channels and you'll see that they'll even start laughing before they even talk about the subject. So they're sort of ridiculing it before they even approach it. And that doesn't help when it comes to wanting to report it. And I'm aware, of course, that pilots and so on and such are getting less pressure into not reporting it like they did at one time. So I think, there's a...
Well, there's also an element of that they've changed the way, because of Bigelow Aerospace pressurized the government, so that now when a UFO is identified or a report goes in through aerospace industry, pilots that are actually taking us all off to Benidorm, they have to report it to Bigelow Aerospace. That should tell us a lot, that they've got a private company that they pay money to track and to register all this information. Really? I would say that the congressional hearings, though, they're talking about military sightings, aren't they, mostly? So that's going to be rarer, I should imagine, the whole world, But at the end of the day, I agree with you, Dave. I think a lot of sightings aren't documented or aren't documented well. Because there's an old joke, isn't there? It goes, I'm going to get my worst camera and just take a picture, blurry, wave my arm around and take a picture of this UFO. When something flies across the sky and it lasts, there's 2 seconds, even if you zoom in on the best camera you've got, you're still not going to get a very good picture of it. It's there, gone, sort of thing, So like,
yeah, I mean, one thing, if you want to try this at home, take your best camera, go out in your front yard, and take pictures of airplanes passing over, and see how far you get. I mean, they're crap photos. You can't tell a Cessna from a Piper from a Boeing or an Airbus.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with you. And they're moving relatively slowly for what we're talking about. So yeah.
Yeah. Boz is right on top. I mean, I had a sighting. I wrote about it and blogged about it, but who exactly do I report it to? The sheriff's department? What is he going to do about it?
The Office of Naval Intelligence.
And they don't have a phone number. So, I mean,
They don't?
I'm sure they do, but they don't publish it. As far as I've ever seen.
Hey, Siri. No. Oh, God.
My God, let me turn my phone off. Jesus.
It's for everybody that's watching. Hey, Siri. Sorry. I've set off again. Stupid woman. Yeah, I would agree with that. So how relevant then is sort of when the government start talking about these things? Does it justify what we're talking about, or does it just, or is it irrelevant because they're only talking about things that they're not going to deny anyway, and they're not going to give us all the information anyway? But is the fact that they've had these hearings relevant?
Oh, okay. So as the token American, I would say so, because Congress is dumber than a box of rocks, and most of Americans are dumber than a box of rocks. I mean, the only, I mean, because it's hard to get above the den of stuff like the Kardashians or whatever's trending on TikTok. So if you can bring a little bit of focus on this for the public, I think it's a good thing. But I mean, I recall back, this is years and years and years ago, when there was this senator, when they were when Congress was investigating Microsoft for anti-trade practices, when they with the Windows Explorer, when they're trying to the browser wars, and it's the senator. I forget his name right off the top of my head. He was like 90 years old, and you could tell he was reading off this thing, and he was reading something about some really hardcore technical aspect of the mail server, and he's reading this asking this of Bill Gates, and Bill Gates just pawns it right off and just gives him this rote technical response that it just right over the senator's head, because it's.
Oh yeah.
I mean, so a lot of the legislatures here in Congress, I mean, God, it's so frustrating because a lot of them just don't believe in science, right?
The
So
Republicans are ridiculous. Did you see the when they had the Facebook data Android fella who's not human?
yeah,
I can't believe his name's going out of my head. But when they had him up and they were asking him questions,
Zuckerberg of 9.
yeah, oh God's sake, it was ridiculous. So some of the questions they were asking was just insane.
Yeah,
we obviously didn't understand. And these are the people that we vote in charge to make these decisions. So you can argue that from a congressional hearing, then that the people that were being spoken to don't understand. But a lot of Republicans seem to believe in aliens. They want to listen. They want the information. I mean, that's why we had these hearings in the first place, because the Republicans snuck it into the COVID bill.
right.
So, I mean, but one of the things they said in this bill during the hearings in the week was that there was, even though there are lots of evidence of objects that have that they can identify most of them, but there are a few they can't identify. They said that there was no evidence to say that any of those sightings were extraterrestrial, even though they then talk about an object that dropped in from hundreds of thousands of feet, hovered for several hours, and then shot up back out of their radar range again. So shot back up to past, is it 80,000 feet is the top of their radar? They took the military radar, something like that.
That they tell us.
The ceiling, yeah. The ceiling height for the radar, yeah.
The service ceiling, the reported service ceiling of naval radar is about 80,000 feet.
And they talk about vehicles that defy what we understand as possible currently today with aerodynamics. So I know evidence. A negative, it doesn't prove. A negative
Right.
information doesn't prove a positive. I know that, but how can they genuinely say that there's no evidence? There's no evidence it's terrestrial either. Surely, if the evidence is either terrestrial or extraterrestrial, but we don't have anything that can do that. So does that leave?
Well, because it's typical politicking, isn't it? It's sidestepping an issue. It's like, technically speaking, what they're saying is correct. They can't prove in a way that it's extraterrestrial, but they don't have to tell you that they can't prove it's terrestrial, because then that calls into question their very argument and their standpoint in the first place. So let's not mention the fact that we can't prove it's terrestrial. Let's just focus in on the fact that we can't prove it's extraterrestrial. It also gives them maneuvering room later on, if it is extraterrestrial, to say, well, we never said it wasn't, we just said we couldn't prove that it was.
Yeah, using the scientific principle.
Yeah,
we can't say that it is. We have no evidence either way, but we can't say that we have no evidence either way, because that confuses people. I suppose you have to be very careful what they say. And
I really wonder, Andrew brought up a good point, is left hand doesn't know what the right hand is saying. That is so true in American government. Oh my God, it is insane. So, this guy, the dude, and I cannot remember his name, from Office of Naval Intelligence, he's talking about they don't have all of the, especially the Maelstrom case, they don't have all of the access to all of the data, and that kind of, to me, in terms of U.S. government speak, that's telling me that he's being kept from something, that there's other data that he can't get because no one's going to give it to him, and the theory is a lot of these things, the material is not in the hands of the government, but military contractors, Northrop, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, the skunk works.
The skunk works. Yeah.
Sophie's question, ideally, really, do you think sometimes the government like the alien stuff because it helps them keep what they're actually doing secret? I mean, it's sort of like, don't look over at the F-117, the stealth bomber that we're designing over here. Look at the UFOs. Look at all the triangular UFOs over here. Look at the shiny thing over there. Do you think? Because we know, like, miscommunication and stuff is the CIA's and any intelligence services bread and butter, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it is. And personally, I mean, I don't, knowing that the military guys that I know, they would rather no one talk about this at all. Then there's jackasses like the three of us that gets up on a Sunday morning and say, hey, let's talk about UFOs and Congress. So I think and if you look at like YouTube, that's all, if you typed in UFOs in your browser anytime in the last 10 years, you're going to be flooded with opinions or the whole video of the congressional hearings.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think the government would rather talk about in terms, let's say there is propaganda to be had. I think at least from the U.S. Standpoint, the propaganda would be much more toward getting increased funding to the DOD for Putin or whatever, or China, and because because the whole UFO thing distracts from women organizing against the GOP here in the United States against this crazy ass abortion ruling coming down from the SCOTUS, the Supreme Court, plus all the states that's already got bills ready to pass that actually bans birth control here in the United States. It's just the law is
supposedly the most forward-thinking, advanced country on the planet. Supposedly,
right, and so from at least a party point of view, you would think that's where the propaganda would be, because let me tell you, women are just pissed off here in the U.S. because of this. And there's like 20 some states that already has laws already passed. Should Roe v. Wade fail, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to ban birth control.
We don't have that problem in this country, and all the women are still pissed off. Or is that just my wife?
And so and so it's I think they'd rather calm that down, at least from a party point of view, than deal with all of us talking about the technology we may or may not have.
It's a good distraction, though.
It is a good distraction.
They always love a distraction.
I think if anybody's remotely thinking that they're not capable of doing that and using it as a means to their ends, then they're wildly misguided. I mean, multiple times throughout history they've done things like that. I mean, just off the top of my head, I can think of several. And you got to look at Greenham Common in the UK. Let's have all the people that are against nuclear weapons all stood outside Greenham Common Air Base, protesting, blocking it, lying down in front of the road so the trucks can't get past. There's no nuclear arsenal there. There never was. It's miles away, at Bentwaters, Woodbridge. Places like that. You've got to look at celebrities will do it. Royalty, a car will come to the front, but they'll disappear out the back. It's commonly used all the time. Distraction techniques within intelligence, and so I'm damn sure governments are doing it, and government agencies and military are doing it all the time. So as far as Area 51, the Blackwell, Papoose Lake, S4, all that lot, I'm sure maybe at one time there may have been something there, Sophie. And, with the leakage by people like Bob Lazar and such, it probably was a Greenham Common for many years afterwards.
Yeah.
There's many other places around the US and around the world that probably people should be looking at.
I've always said Diego Garcia is a very interesting location, and they're spending a lot of money building underground bases apparently at Diego Garcia, because you can actually, if you Google it, you can see how much it costs and all sorts. You can see what they're doing. That's an island that's literally in the middle of nowhere. It's like 1,000 miles for anything. And I love how they rented that off the UK. And officially, the reason why they rented off the UK, because they have to put like a document in to justify it for Congress. And they said, well, there are parts of India we can't reach without bombers.
Yeah,
they admitted it. It's like, why are you that interested? But anyway, we answered the question best we could. But yeah, I think that's true. I 100% think that's true. Baz's comment about I get my information from Nick Pope and Tyler just reminded me something about what you mentioned earlier, Dave, about how whenever the reporters, normally on Fox News talk about aliens a lot, they'll go, another UFO has been sighted over Vegas. Here's Nick Pope to tell us more. And then they wheel Nick Pope out. I wish.
Yeah, so basically, they have a good laugh and then they bring on the clown.
Yeah.
Take deep breaths.
Deep breaths. Nick fucking Pope. Go back and have a look at our video on Nick Pope. We're not friendly. We're not polite.
Yeah.
But he's, it just drives him up the wall. I mean, how has he made a career out of it? And more importantly, why can't I?
Well, I can sort of answer that
on...
in a way, Jay. Sorry, brother. I can sort of answer that in a way because people who are willing to sell out for sensationalism are always going to sell more books, more movies, more amphitheater seats than people that are actually actively seeking the truth all the time, always, because they will ride on the crest of a fashion. It's all about bums on seats. Technically, I know that's a broad sweeping statement to make, but mostly it's true because they all do it. You'll get truth seekers that will come out, and as soon as they start to get that little bit of fame or infamy, call it what you will, they'll sell out.
Yeah, I've always thought that, to be honest. I get moaned at. I get called a shill occasionally, and I'm like, I'm not a shill.
Well, you are.
I wish this channel doesn't pay me that much. But
your shill is.
If I am a shill, I need CIA to write a check because I'm getting a bit off. I need some more money.
You need to make your Bentley payment.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But if I sometimes, even on this channel, if I express an honest opinion, say, well, I don't think this is true because of blah, 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 and that disagrees with someone else's opinion, I'm a shill. And I'm like, no, I thought we were here to debate. And I know we lose a lot of subscribers because of that. I know we do, because they tell me to effing do one and then unsubscribe. Because we don't just do the sensational, do we? We actually talk about things and try to bring it in. And Bazzy, you're in. First one down. I want to be the high priest. No, I'm the high priest, you dipstick.
Well, you got to work. Bazzy, you got to be the acolyte first, man. You got to work your way up in this. There's no free ride here in our cult.
To be fair, these two should be the high priests first, Bazzy.
And besides which, you wouldn't be the high priest. You would be the messianic character within the cult. You'd be the prophet.
Yeah, I've got to be God. Yeah.
I'm the Loki of this bunch, just so you know.
I think you should be our technical advisor.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Or fine.
Flight boss.
I'll be the minister of propaganda.
I'm just going to start titling all my videos clickbait.
Fancy robes for all.
I will say this about
that's the whole point. I just want someone to do my cleaning for me. I don't actually want the call. I just want someone to do the housework.
Going back to the stuff that went on in the Pentagon, was it a guy called Elizondo or something like that?
Yeah,
like office. Was it the old USDI or something was in and all that lot? And he's saying that as far as the House Intelligence Committee was concerned, some ground was making. It was historical. He's trying to claim that it was historical because they've announced pretty much that they're going to work even closer with their allies, like with the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, and that, to make sure that they share information, and that it's supposed to be getting passed into legislature that they're going to do that. Yeah, or is that just yet another? Yeah,
it's another way of strengthening that big six with the intelligence services. It's us, America, Canada, randomly, so Australia.
Yeah,
that's Finland or something. There's something really random in there as well. But there's these big six countries that supposedly share intelligence. But I've spoken to intelligence people that are working around in intelligence before, and says that it's a very one-way street. Americans like to have the information, but they don't necessarily like to share it a great deal.
Yeah, you mean like the bomb?
Yeah, exactly.
Despite how many UK scientists worked on it to help it bring it to a conclusion during the Manhattan Project, they didn't share the technology with the UK. We had to develop our own white sun technology, didn't we? So that is farm for the US. Without wanting to beat down on any Americans, it's just a statement of fact. That's the way it goes.
Go right ahead. Not stopping you, bro. Not stopping you.
Yeah. Say Stormy. Say it.
Speaking of the Manhattan Project, I did meet a machinist that worked on the power systems for Manhattan Project. He had a little certificate from the government for their thanks for working on it after all this shit was declassified years later. And he was just this little old guy. He was the machinist for the power systems, and he made machine stuff.
What a thing to have worked on.
Look at
that big explosion. I helped that.
Yeah.
God. Well, I mean, I was arguing with somebody. Said I was trying to explain to my boys why they nuked Hiroshima, and so it's because the end of the war. It's because and then they nuked Nagasaki the 2 days later, 48 hours later. And even my boys were like, why did they do that? And there was this like, I think it's because they wanted to scare everybody. It's because wouldn't have Japan have surrendered after the first one if they've given them a chance?
No.
Yeah.
I got no idea. I mean, they let one off, and like they waited a couple days, let another one off.
It took a few days actually for all the correct information to reach Tokyo, because it wasn't like it was now. I mean, as far as the extent of the damage and the amount of casualties, and I think also the fact of the matter, it's like, okay, we need to let these know that this isn't just a one-off. We can do this again. Yeah, this is the real deal. We have got this technology. And did they have something like 6 ready to go within a few months? They could have dropped another 6 within a few months after that.
There's an element as well that they had to, because they had to fly it in by aircraft, they had to make sure that they ended this before they realized that if we shore up our air defenses, we could protect. They could have potentially protected themselves. But they had
the argument. The argument ultimately is they've done that much island up in the U.S. Marines and the U.S. Navy, the U.S. military, to take back all the islands around the Ryukyus and the Peloponnese and all that type of area, and just the sheer amount of casualties. They would have to have invaded mainland Japan, which would have cost untold. I'm not justifying the bomb, by the way, but the mindset behind it would have cost the sheer amount of casualties that would have been taken invading mainland Japan to bring the war to an end. So
I think it was a necessary evil, if I'm honest. I'm just not sure they needed to do it twice. I think once and give them a chance could have been enough, and say you need to, give them at least a couple of days. But anyway, we wandered away from aliens. Let's want to talk about Bikini Atoll, which has loads of alien sightings.
We can do that at some stage. Should you like us to, people? Just let us know in the comments.
Excuse me. But I mean, we make that point about the congressional hearing, so about being all bun, no burger sort of thing. And I think it's a good point. But, they do talk about evidence, which is difficult to ignore. I mean, we talked about the Tic Tac video last week, and we sort of say, if this isn't alien technology, then what the hell is it? Because we have done anything else. Is it just something from DARPA? And like I say, the American military don't know what it is because it's a secret. Or is it something for the Chinese equivalent? If
it was, my feeling is, just knowing how DARPA works, if it was some sort of dark DARPA project, there'd be no way in hell Congress would talk about it. There's not a hearing.
They were going, shut up.
Keep in mind, there's a hearing after this hearing with they couldn't say. But if this was a DARPA thing, there would have been a phone call from somebody to the committee chair said, no, this all has to be under wraps. We'll tell you about it because you have, because of transparency on the law, we cannot discuss this in public. And by the way, we're going to say Kim Kardashian saw a UFO and then discredit the whole thing. I mean, if it was a DARPA, it was something that we were running. I don't think there would have been a unless the committee chair, there would not have been a hearing unless the committee chair was caught in bed with a live hooker or a dead boy. I mean, that's the only time that would have been covered. Just saying.
No, I agree with that 100%. I mean, did they not actually say though that it's not so much a defense issue? Well, they were considered it a defense issue, but also what might be considered space clutter or space junk issue as well. The things that were being said. Now, I don't know if they were trying to include the Tic Tac video in that, or basically just pass everything off as well. People are seeing things in the sky that's just bits and bats we're leaving when we're going up there, and that's all it is. But surely they're aware of these objects and what's likely to be coming down and when, and tracking it and stuff. Things re-entering the Earth's atmosphere, satellites that have gone out of usage and such, old AMSATs and stuff from the old AM radio days and that coming back in and burning up. You would expect.
All of this stuff is supposed to. Don't they say they can track anything up to the size of a tin can that they track? They're literally tracking hundreds of thousands of objects because an object the size of a tin can, if it was to hit a satellite or the International Space Station, would destroy it.
Totally destroy it.
So they track what they can. You know, I mean, I know there's a limit to the technology, but I'm sure it's about the size of a tin of beans. They say they can track.
Right.
You know, well,
I mean, even smaller than a tin of beans. I mean, I know that back in the shuttle days, we lost like a wrench.
Yeah.
We still track the wrench, you know.
But it's the fact that they said the wording of it I found interesting, that they are classing it not only as a defence issue, but as a so on and so forth. But that wording alone, we're classing it not only as a defence issue, so admitting that it is a defence issue, is it not?
Yeah, and I would say it's talking about defense.
No, I mean, I would say yes is a defense issue because the DoD is the only people that's investigating it. I mean, there's no branch of the government, like they don't let NASA in on it. That we don't.
Oh no,
it's all DoD,
which doesn't make any
that's
sense.
The only player, right?
Why wouldn't they bring in the civilian thing that know about this, or even like Space Force, Go Space Force? You know, why wouldn't they bring that? I mean, surely that's their job, isn't it? Isn't that what they do? But talking about this, and they're basically admitting then a lot that these objects, some of these ones, they say that we know what most of them are, but there are some we just don't know.
Yeah.
Even by admitting that, the DoD admitting that, how much does that tell us about what they're seeing then? That if they're willing to admit that there are objects that are able to come into our skies and they don't know what they are and can't do anything about it, how worried should we be that they're willing to admit that?
I kind of take it as comfort, you know, that we've been having these sightings for such a long time and no one's taken over New York. No one's blown up the White House. There, you know, it's still at the end of the day, I'm more worried about, you know, a crazy deputy at the sheriff's department than I am a UFO, you know, because, you know, California keeps having these damn shootings all the time. There's one like yesterday in San Bernardino. The day before,
it doesn't even get reported in this country anymore. No schools got shut up. Oh yeah.
You know, but I'd like to bring up a couple points, if I may, about the hearing that I learned something. You know, and the three of us were usually on top of all this stuff, and that I actually did learn a couple of very useful facts and something I've been asking for quite some time. The first one was, you know, one of the congressmen asked, have we ever taken a pot shot at one of these guys? You know, and that's a kind of a big question to be answered is, have we ever engaged militarily with one of these crowds? We've always been in a surveillance mode. We've all been watching what the hell it is. You know, one thing, airplane still can't get it on, you know, targeting.
Can't track it. You can't target.
Right. We can look at it, but we can't target it. And the answer was no. We've never taken a pot shot at one of these objects, which thank God we haven't, right?
I would say that was World War II, and we almost, if you believe the rumor, we shot 60,000 rounds at an object.
I mean, you know, at least from this guy's point of view, or the reporting that he has available, no one has given the order to shoot at them.
Apart from the Battle of New York, though, with all the anti-aircraft fire going off.
Was that where Snake was trying to get the president out? I forget.
There's like thousands of anti-aircraft shells going up at this object caught in the spot in the searchlights. I'd say that's shooting on an unknown object, quite frankly. But okay,
hundreds of thousands of anti-aircraft rounds.
If that's what that geezer's saying, then fair dues.
Maybe it was since then. Maybe they just went. Actually, the aliens went down and tapped the president on the shoulder and went, "Don't do that again." And they went,
"Don't do that."
Okay, let's not do that again.
The other thing that they said that was really definitive, and again, this is the guy from the Office of Naval Intelligence. We are positive this technology is not from any U.S. enemy. You know, which rules out, you know, I think China and Russia and whoever else. It's not from a U.S. enemy. And like we're allies with most of the countries on this planet, sans North Korea. And so I think that was quite of an admission. So it's not from us. I mean, we've had other reporting in other places, New York Times, for example. We are in possession of craft not of this earth.
Yeah.
And so it's not from any enemy. So we've narrowed it down. It's not from Russia or any U.S. enemy, and we don't know what it is. And we're pretty sure it's not a DARPA thing, or we'd be discussing something else. So I still think
it's highly unlikely to be Canadian or from the UK either, is it?
It's the Welsh.
It's the Welsh. It's always the bloody Welsh. There'll be some sort of new sheep tracking system.
It rules out the Chinese. It rules out the Russians. It's not the US, and the USA. It's not from any of our allies. Are we not running out of options about who it is then?
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, Andrew makes a point of us that if it was a demonstration flight, why didn't we shoot at it? And it's maybe because we've known about these objects for a very long time. Is one argument to say that we've known that these vehicles have been visiting us for a very, very long time. And the military knows not to shoot at them because they don't actually cause us a threat. So why shoot at them? We don't really either. They do know who they are, depending on which crazy YouTube channel you watch. We do know exactly who they are, and they're in contact with us. So we're allied with them in some ways, or we're under their thumb in other ways. Or actually, more terrifying, we have no clue who they are, but we know they're advanced enough to do what they're doing. And obviously, we either have enough sense to know that actually we have shot at them before and nothing happened, so we just don't bother anymore, or with hopefully, they've got enough sense not to shoot them in the first place because they've seen a movie. That'd be the first time anyone's ever learned anything from a sci-fi movie.
In terms of how I guess U.S. pilots shoot at stuff, if you're in an active war, let's say World War II, and you feel something is an enemy threat, you shoot at it. Now, at peacetime, you cannot shoot at anything unless it shoots first. And as far as I know, nothing has been downed purposely from aliens attacking the UK, US, or whoever. Secondarily, we can, as I was talking a few minutes ago, we can definitely see these on different types of technological platforms. We can see them radar and FLIR, et cetera, but we can't target them. And with all modern aircraft these days, there's a targeting system. You just can't line your airplane up and shoot at it most of the time. With these advanced fighter jets, I mean, there is, of course, the A-10 Warthog, which you can kind of line up. The gun is stationary, and the gun is
point your nose at what you want to kill. Don't you?
The airplane's part of the gun essentially, and you can line it up. But that's a very short range.
It's a ground attack.
It's a ground attack, and it flies very slowly. It can't go Mach, anything like that, and so it's the fact we hadn't shot something down may be of technological nature that we just can't get a target lock on it, and we've never been seen one of these things in a theater of war and thought that, well, is that the North Koreans, or is that the Soviets, or is that the Nazis, or is that the I don't know, the Republican Guard, for example?
Yeah, and it's never been threatening. So, that's what the government say, isn't it?
In one fell swoop, Storm has just totally debunked one of the theories about the Roswell crash, then, hasn't he? When it was shot down. Yeah.
I can reverse on that because of special circumstances and evidence.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Dave hates this theory, but I've always liked the theory that it was radar that potentially knocked a UFO at the sky. And but I could see that it's almost like dirty technology or like almost like pollution. So these vehicles are so advanced, so technological, and then we throw up this dirty energy into the atmosphere, and it just screwed one of them up. And that's why we had like a blip of 5 or 6 years where actually that we might have had a few crashes, and maybe it was radar or just radio transmissions that all of a sudden just like filled the size. Maybe it did screw them a little bit, like your Samsung 7 on an airplane. But I remember being on an airplane once, and I said, I've forgotten to turn my phone off. Do you need me to turn it off? I have to do the thing. And he went, it's not Samsung 7, is it? No, because I don't worry about them.
Well, the Samsung 7, it wasn't a radio issue. It was the lithium battery exploded.
That was the thing, yeah.
Unless the alien's using a Samsung 7, and well, if they are, they're not that smart.
Well, that's why the saucer blew up over New Mexico.
Samsung 7.
Yeah, cheap batteries. The battery exploded.
Yeah. That'll take them.
Maybe. Exactly.
Oh, if I can go back to the, I forget who it was, brought up something about the Messerschmitt during World War II. I mean, it was the Messerschmitt, first jet engine that really saw production, but it wasn't that big of a stretch. I mean, the United States was working on something like that. Nikola Tesla had his own turbine 30 years prior to 30 years prior to the start of World War II. Yeah. So it was just the Germans got there first, but then, we got there first with the nuclear bomb, with an atomic bomb. So I mean, it was just, there's a Messerschmitt I've had the pleasure of inspecting. It's in the Evergreen Aviation Space Museum in McMinnville, Oregon. And, it's just not that fantastic. I mean, yeah, it was a jet engine. And yeah, it could go at incredible speed compared to a radial engine like a Wasp 7 or something. But man, it sucked down fuel like nobody's business. It had a very short range,
20 minutes or something.
Oh, it was extreme. Yeah, it was a very short range fighter.
Yeah. I'll also say this, that it wasn't a very good fighter as well, because the P-51 Mustang totally outperformed it and caused it a lot of problems when it comes to the European theatre of war.
Yeah.
So the few times it was involved in combat, the American P-51 Mustang kicked its ass. Just saying.
The P-51 Mustang was only any good because of why, Stormy?
Yes.
Wasn't the Mustang a bit shit?
Oh, it was an amazing piece of American technology.
I wouldn't say it was shit.
Overpowered, man. Fast wings, really nice.
Only when you put a British engine in it. Until then, the Merlin was the Mustang was a piece of crap. You put the Merlin engine in it, and it was amazing.
I think you're talking about the P-38, aren't you?
P-38, I thought it was the P-51 Mustang.
Oh, now we got to look it up.
And then they slung the fuel. They put the fuel engine.
The P-51 did have a Merlin in it at some stage. I'm sure it did myself. Yeah.
P-51 Merlin engine.
Look at where we've gone, everybody. It always happens.
Packard. It had a Packard in it.
Yeah, Mustang switched to the Merlin engine, made it a world beater. It started off with the Packard horsepower, and then switched to the Merlin.
And there's also a Rolls-Royce Mustang at some point in time was the British variant. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but to be fair, that's one of the things that I saw. It was an American guy. He was talking about the TSR-2 that the British built, and he got to fly one, and then we scrapped it and bought the F-111, which is
okay. So so you guys, you actually had your engine was British. The American version was an Allison.
So was Allison.
Was an Allison, right? And Allison used to make tractors in the United States.
Yeah.
And so apparently your version of the P-51 Mustang, the British variant, did use English propulsion, and the American version used an Allison V1710. So we're both right. Isn't that odd?
Yeah, no, I still think
that makes a nice change, doesn't it?
And there was another one, the P-38. I think.
When was the P-51 flown by aliens? This is
the Lightning.
The Lightning.
No. This is all to do with the 262 jet, isn't it?
Yeah, it's fascinating as well. And like my favorite thing about the German was that it looked like a shark, and I just loved. I thought it was just a stunning aircraft, looking aircraft. But yeah, no, it's not a particularly good one. And then you've got things like the V1 using that dirty pulse engine thing that they had. Anyway. So shall we wrap it up, because we've got the last quarter of an hour, and I've got a really itchy nose and it's doing my head in.
Go on then. What's the last thing on your list, buddy?
No, I haven't actually got anything else on the list. So the point I was going to make about the government actually talking about it and admitting that they don't know what it is, though, their job is to protect us. So is the fact that they are admitting that they don't know what it is, does that tell us more than what they're not saying, does that make sense? It's not necessarily what they're saying, it's that they're admitting even that point that should make us a little bit not concerned necessarily, but should we be listening? Because they're like going, "Oh, your job is to protect us, and you're saying you can't."
I don't think Americans would care.
No. So the airspace can be invaded by an object, and they can't do anything about
I mean,
it.
Most Americans these days, if you read Facebook and all the conversations about it, they don't even understand the purpose of NATO. So making high theoretical type of logic conclusions concerning are the space people our friends or enemies, and they can't even make that leap. I mean, for the most part, they can't.
Yeah.
And again, for me, this all goes back. Why is this always handled by the Office of Naval Intelligence? Like I said before, even going back to the Roswell incident, Office of Naval Intelligence. Bob Lazar was employed by Office of Naval Intelligence. Even though he's at Area 51, I'm pretty sure there's not a naval shipyard in the middle of Nevada, but he worked for the for the Office of Naval Intelligence, per the evidence of his tax returns, which have been verified.
It just for some reason that office has been tasked with this job, hasn't it? For some reason. And a lot of this stuff seems to go over oceans. So.
It's that brings me nicely on to whether people care and what their reactions would be. And there were studies done on this. A few years ago, 1970s, and then also in the 1990s, about people's responses to admissions of alien life being a definite and UFOs being a definite. And I took a couple of notes here. A study that was conducted by the National Institute for Discovery Science, apparently. And there were a couple of things that they were looking into that I find interesting just off these different subjects before they'd done this poll. But one of them was DNA analysis of alleged extraterrestrial biological material and anatomical molecular forensic investigations they were responsible for, which I find interesting. Preliminary acoustic analysis of unusual large animal vocalizations that were recorded in April 20th, 2003 in Snohomish County, Washington. You have to forgive me for the pronunciation. And then the
actually, you nailed that. You nailed that. By the way,
did I really? That surprises me.
Yeah,
so I'm very bad at that.
We said something right.
Yeah, I know. I was like, an English guy pronounced something correctly. Who'd have thunk it? But in 1999, they polled apparently 1,971 demographically balanced people. And then the same questions were asked of 2,049 uncontrolled people, but who had access to scientific information. And the two groups were exposed to questions about possible alien existence. And the people, so you had people who were members of the NIDS website, people who had a scientific background, and the general public who had little or no knowledge of UFO other than what was portrayed in the media. And some of the things that they got, the responses on the poll was, so in response to question number 1, and it was posited to the, each control group, ETs landed and you could choose who should make first contact. 86% chose scientists or a private organization that has planned for such a contingency. And the public at large, only 49% chose the same thing and 20% chose the military. Another one was in response to the question regarding what are UFOs, 41% said they didn't know, and only 25% said they thought they were alien spaceships, whereas 82% of people that had a scientific background believed they were alien spaceships. Question 4 asked how much respondents trusted the US government to disseminate information about advanced extraterrestrial life if they discovered it. And apparently both surveys indicated a large majority who didn't trust the government at all, surprisingly. And a combined 71% to the Roper survey said that the United States government would classify the information and move to suppress civilian sources from attaining knowledge of both. And finally, on that one, a large majority, 75% of the scientific people, if you like, were fully prepared to handle undeniable evidence of existence of advanced extraterrestrial life, and 32% of the general public thought the same. But only 25% of the public at large thought that it would totally freak people out, and only 8% of scientific background people thought that people would freak out about alien life, apparently. So there's a couple of stats that were conducted back then, and some of the things that they were looking into, it can be found online, this, should anybody want to look into it. But the National Institute for Discovery Science, they were another body that some of the evidence that they'd found or put together was used within the congressional hearing recently that we're talking about. There was some very interesting things that they were tasked to look into regarding not just UFOs, but also hominid life forms, whether they were simian or not, or whether they were humanoid or not. So your Bigfoot and Sasquatch kind of thing. And also the existence of spiritual life after death. So a lot of things being addressed as is it all a move, is what I'm aiming at. Is it all a move towards testing the water, a little bit of a litmus test to see what the public think and how they would react to disclosure, a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time,
We always imagine it, if there was full, unequivocal disclosure that, humans would freak out. There'd be religious services would be through the roof. I just don't know if that would happen or not, because, for what happened in the New York Times back in 2020, in the summer of 2020, we are in possessions of craft not of this earth.
Barely nobody noticed.
It was just like there was no follow-up, and it was just, oh, okay, fine. It was just lackadaisical response from the public, again, which TikTok is the thing for today. And it's kind of disappointing, but maybe we've been there since the 60s or 70s. And I think we were talking about maybe scientists should do the first contact as opposed to D, what science's role in this. And one thing that just really, I never really wrapped my head around it until this week. I saw an article in Astronomy about how the James Webb Space Telescope, can probably detect mass farming, agriculture on a distant world, because of how it can filter the light from photosynthesis.
Yeah, talking about that, we're looking for industry as well, haven't they? If there's industry, there'd be a change in the chemical constitution of the atmosphere, and we can potentially see that.
And that just kind of blows my mind. And so if we find loads of planets emitting, that's undergoing or has plant life that undergoes photosynthesis, which we think probably is quite common. Holy cat crap. Then the next question is, okay, who's doing the farming?
Holy cat crap.
I know, just thinking. I never remember Batman saying that, but that's a Batman-esque kind of exclamation. Holy bat crap. Yeah, thwack.
Holy guano.
And I do think it's interesting that idiot who keeps saying that meteorite was, I do know his name, is the Israeli fella. He said that meteorite that came through a few years ago was almost definitely space junk, but he did make an interesting point. Loeb, how do you pronounce it? Avi Loeb. He did say that we shouldn't be necessarily looking for aliens. We should be looking for their waste. We know we're an industrial species. We throw loads of radio transmissions into space, and it's just junk. It's just we should be looking for their rubbish. And it's the same for an atmosphere. If we find an atmosphere that has high levels of gases that we know would be, I say man-made, but you know what I mean, that are artificial, then that's a
emissions.
Something like benzene,
Yeah. In an atmosphere, then we would be looking at, well, that's potentially an industrial process, and then a sign of that there's a species that are at a certain level of technological,
it's like crap gas and radio waves. That's what we should be looking for.
That's what Sagan said.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Okay then, guys. Well, we are coming to the end of the show. It's really thank you for joining us again. We've sorted out one more problem. Disclosure happening. Let's watch your movies, people.
Yeah, man.
Spielberg is in on it.
I'm telling you. Speaking, I gotta plug this. I saw advertised Night Sky with Sissy Spacek on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give it a watch. I'll watch an episode. 5 hours later at 1 a.m. this morning, I finally go to bed, and I've been through half of it, and it is really good. It's not fast paced. It's not aliens exploding. It is kind of like a cross between Lost and the American TV show The Waltons. It is well acted, well written, and it just like it makes you think of new things and new ideas, which is hard for me because I watch this shit all the time. But it was very clever and very well done. And I'm not done yet. So as soon as I stop yakking with you guys, I'm going to watch the next 5 straight hours.
Good old binge watching.
Yeah.
Wish my wife would let me do that. Should we walk the dog? No, I'm watching Star Trek. Leave me alone. But no, I love my wife. She tries to make me look after myself. Okay. But anyway, yes, I will give that a go. I've seen it on Amazon. I haven't watched it yet, but I will give it a watch. Thank you for your recommendation, sir. I think Paramount Plus came on the UK here today, so I can actually finally watch Strange New Worlds. So that's where I'm going.
And that too is awesome. I won't.
Good to speak. Yeah.
There's no Wesley Crusher in the episode so far.
Oh, come on. I love Will Wheaton. Hate Wesley Crusher. Love Will. Hate Wes. It's just that's the way of the world. Thank you guys for joining us. And guys, if you want us to talk about anything next week that you can think of, any mysteries or anything you just got, I wonder about that. Tell us. We will talk about it for 1 hour and rip it apart and then disappoint you when at the end we go, don't believe it.
Oh yes.
Thank you again. Thank you, Dave. Please go over and subscribe to Dave's channel if you haven't already. And as well with Cyworks, you can watch him try to blow himself up with hydrogen in one video. It's very
yes.
He used to have a full head of hair and then he did a hydrogen video.
See, I'm still suffering.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Shelley. Thank you, everybody else that's got into
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me again.
Take it easy, everybody.
Our resident America. Say aluminium, Stormy.
Aluminium.
I love you. And on that note, see you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
I always forget.